Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history, the only history class where the pop quiz is a drone strike. The syllabus is classified and the substitute teacher is just Elon Musk in a powdered wig. Today we're looking at July 28th, a date that's basically the Michael Bay of the Gregorian calendar. Loud, violent, and somehow still trying to teach you a moral lesson. We've got revolutions gone wild, civil rights amendments with trust issues, veterans tear gassed by future presidents, and even a little rocket fuel to finish it off. So buckle up. Let's take a trip through time that'll leave your conscience just as scorched as Hamburg in 1943. Segment 1, the Fall of Robespierre. When your reign of terror too hard. Ah, Robespierre. The guy who looked at revolution and thought, this needs more decapitations. By 1794, France was guillotining people faster than TikTok trends go out of style. But July 28th was the day the blade flipped. Robespierre, once the poster child for revolutionary justice, ended up the main character in the Reign of Terror's season finale, executed without trial along with his besties. It was like if The Purge ended with the guy who wrote The Purge getting purged. His downfall wasn't just a haircut gone wrong, it was a political gut check. The revolution, it turns out, wasn't a pyramid scheme where you survive by killing everyone above and below you. Who knew? The real irony? Robespierre's big crime was being too efficient. The man passed a law that made death sentences faster and easier, and the law worked, especially on him. It's like designing a booby trap, then forgetting where you put it. And after his execution, France swerved hard from liberty or death to can we just chill? It was like going from Burning Man to a PTA meeting. Segment 2. Peru declares independence. Colonial breakups. It's not me, it's España. Jumping continents to 1821. Peru declared independence from Spain. Finally, after 300 years of colonialism, Peru stood up and said, no mas. And Spain said, wait, what? We were still colonizing Peru? This was brought to you by José de San Martín, the overachiever of Latin America. He liberated Argentina, then Chile, then strolled into Peru like, anyone else need freedom? I've got a few republics left in me. He crossed the Andes with an army, which, let me be clear, is not something you do casually. That's not a hike, that's a Tinder date with gravity and death. But he pulled it off, took Lima, and declared independence like a boss. And for his trouble, San Martín got a political nightmare. Because post-colonial Latin America was basically Game of Thrones with fewer dragons and more generals who all thought they were the main character. His dream of a unified South America shattered. Instead, everyone decided to be their own country with their own presidents, coups, and civil wars. It's like breaking up with a toxic empire, only to realize your new roommates also suck. Segment 3, the 14th Amendment certified. Equal protection, eventually. Fast forward to 1868. Post-Civil War America was like a country trying to duct tape itself back together after a bar fight. Enter the 14th Amendment, certified on July 28th. The 14th promised citizenship, due process, and equal protection to everyone born in the U.S., which sounds great until you realize America's favorite hobby is ignoring its own amendments like terms of service agreements. The ink wasn't even dry before the courts were like, what if we didn't? The slaughterhouse cases basically gutted the amendment's power. In Plessy versus Ferguson, that was the legal equivalent of separate but equal bathrooms, one with plumbing, the other with a bucket. It took until Brown versus Board in 1954 for the Supreme Court to actually mean it when they said equal protection. It's an 86-year delay. Imagine ordering a pizza and getting it 3 presidents later. And yet, despite all that, the 14th has become the go-to legal Swiss Army knife for civil rights. Racial justice, marriage equality, voting rights. It's the constitutional equivalent of Beyonce. Underestimated early on, now absolutely everywhere. Segment 4. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia, the world's most explosive overreaction. July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary, a literal empire held together by bratwurst and bureaucracy, declares war on Serbia. Why? Because someone assassinated Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Now, I'm not saying his death wasn't serious. It was, but this was less justice for Franz and more blame Serbia and light the world on fire. Austria gets Germany to back them like a hype man in a rap battle. Russia sides with Serbia. France jumps in. Britain's like, oh bloody hell. And suddenly it's global war over what started as a Balkan slap fight. This was geopolitics by Rube Goldberg machine. One empire sneezed and 30 million people died. Alliances meant for peace work like a group text that ends in a fistfight. And of course, everyone thought it'd be over in 6 weeks. Spoiler? It took 4 years, introduced chemical warfare, trench foot, and a little-known side effect called the invention of Hitler. Segment 5, bonus army eviction, from doughboys to tear gas. July 28, 1932. America was knee-deep in the Great Depression, and 20,000 World War I veterans camped in D.C. said, hey, remember those bonuses you promised us in 1924 for 1945? Can we maybe get those now before we literally starve to death? Congress flirted with compassion, but the Senate swiped left hard. So President Hoover did what any out-of-touch executive does when faced with poor people asking for help. He sent in the army, because nothing says thank you for your service like tear gas and bayonets. And who led that military assault? Oh, just a greatest hits lineup of future generals. Douglas MacArthur, George Patton, and Dwight D. Eisenhower. Basically, the Justice League of overreaction. MacArthur exceeded orders and torched the camps. America watched footage of soldiers beating veterans and collectively went, wait, are we the bad guys? The bonus army didn't get their money right away, but they did get something better. Franklin D. Roosevelt, and eventually the GI Bill, because nothing gets results in America like embarrassing your leaders on camera. Segment 6, Operation Gamora. Hamburg gets firestormed. If you ever wonder what happens when Allied forces go full inferno, look no further than July 28, 1943. Operation Gamora. The name alone sounds like the Pentagon hired a metal band to plan it. The goal, destroy Hamburg's industrial capacity and morale, and boy did they commit to the bit. Over 3,000 sorties, 9,000 tons of bombs, a firestorm that made Dante's Inferno look like a cozy campfire. We're talking 42,000 civilian deaths. Glass melted, streets boiled. The fire got so intense it created its own weather system. Imagine bombing a city so hard it becomes a meteorological event. Operation Gamora did cripple German production and sow panic, but it also raised ethical alarms. I mean, is morale bombing a war crime or just a really bad motivational seminar? Segment 7, NASA established. To infinity and government oversight. Let's cool off from the firestorms with some space nerdiness. July 28, 1958. Congress passed the National Aeronautics and Space Act, creating NASA, America's new space agency, and the first government agency with zero parking issues. This was our answer to the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik. People freaked out. If the Russians could put a satellite in orbit, what's next? A communist moon colony? Red Mars? Eisenhower responded like a responsible adult by creating a civilian-led space agency. Not military, just nerds with degrees and pocket protectors launching stuff into the sky. NASA took over NACA, snatched up JPL, and turned rocket scientists from a metaphor into a career goal. Then it was Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and Buzz Aldrin punching moon conspiracists. And now, decades later, NASA is prepping for Mars, studying climate change, and still having less drama than SpaceX. Segment 8, the IRA End Armed Campaign, from bombs to ballots. Let's end on something hopeful and Irish. July 28, 2005. The provisional IRA officially ended its armed campaign after decades of sectarian violence known as the Troubles. After 30 years of bombings, assassinations, and more bitterness that a Guinness left out in the sun, the IRA said, all right, lads, let's try this democracy thing. Disarmament was verified, trust was built, even loyalist paramilitaries gave up their weapons. And no, peace didn't fix everything, but it was a start. July 28, 2005, with the day Northern Ireland's worst chapter started to finally close. It showed the world that even the most entrenched conflicts can be unraveled with negotiation, compromise, and exhaustion. In conclusion, so there you have it, July 28th, a day that saw the end of tyrants, the beginning of freedom, the certification of rights, the spark of world wars, the failure of government apathy, the fury of firestorms, the launch of scientific dreams, and the quiet surrender of violence. From the fall of Robespierre to the rise of rockets, this one date reminds us that history isn't linear. It's chaotic, complicated, and often burns a little too hot. But through revolution, oppression, war, peace, and progress, July 28th teaches one lesson loud and clear. What humans start in chaos, they occasionally fix with courage, compromise, and, when necessary, a billion-dollar space program. Happy July 28th. Don't forget to question authority, read the fine print in your constitutional amendments, and maybe call your favorite veteran and thank them with money, not tanks. Catch you next time.